So this past weekend was the non-NDA Ashes of Creation Alpha 1 preview test, and I had the chance to play the game for a few hours and see how things are progressing along. Initially I recorded this video as a first impression style format, but all 9 hours of my facecam footage got completely messed up, so you'll have to settle for a voiceover video instead. Today's video has no sponsor, but if you're interested in Ashes of Creation and want to support the channel, then you can create an account for the game using my referral link in the description below, and I'll be rewarded for it once the game is eventually fully released. Also bear in mind that this is the first non-NDA testing phase for the game, and it's still a long way out from a full release, so don't take this as a final product. So starting out, there were 4 playable races with male and female options for each, as well as 3 different classes for this alpha test. For the full release of the game, there will be 9 different races and 8 base classes. The character creation right now is super limited with only a few presets, but we know this is something that will be added later on. I decided to play a Kalar male mage called Big Damage. I logged into the world and read a notice that basically explained that this was not a content test, or one of those marketing alphas that games like to do 2 months before a full release. This was a legit alpha designed to test the backend, core systems, fix bugs, and gather feedback. I zoned into the world through one of the Divine Gateways, and the first thing I noticed was the enchanting background music that you've probably heard in some of the game's trailers. I got familiar with the controls, shift to sprint, the Z key switches between tab and action camera mode, and control is dodge. There was no obvious giant exclamation mark or instructions telling me where to go, so I followed the path to some NPCs and spoke to a sergeant to see if he had any tasks for me. I went through the dialogue and I was given multiple choice answers when talking to the NPC. He sent me to go kill some animated armor mobs. Before doing that though, I spoke to another NPC, and going through her dialogue options resulted in me being given a level 15 quest. This immediately gave me the feeling that questing and zone layouts in Ashes would be non-linear. I got to work killing the animated armor, and it was very quickly apparent that the combat has been improved for the mage class since the last time I tested the game a few months ago. Previously, the fireball ability locked you in a static long animation and felt extremely clunky. Now the animation is sped up and it can be cast on the move. It felt pretty good. Additionally, the wand felt a lot more impactful than in the past. Previously, you could hardly see any projectiles or hit effects when using the wand, but now it looks and feels much more impactful. I killed the mobs, handed in the quest, and was then introduced to some merchants where I could sell my loot and buy gathering tools. I grinded some mobs for money, got to level 2, and went back to the merchant to buy one of each tool. I then spoke to the blacksmith to get a quest to craft a new magic wand. At this point I ran around exploring the area, killing mobs, and looking for gathering resource to collect so I could craft this wand. However, unbeknown to me, the gathering resource spawn rates were bugged during this alpha, so gatherable trees, stones, and plants were very rare. Eventually I decided it would be better to do some resource gathering whilst cracking on with other quests, so I went back to the sergeant to see if he had anything else for me to do. After going through some multiple choice dialogue options, the NPC asked me what kind of task I'd like. I could deliver supplies, go hunt monsters, go on a patrol, hunt a world boss, or do some research and discovery. I really loved the feeling of freedom I got when the game gave me all of those choices so early on, and I didn't have to sit through some 2-hour tutorial holding my hand like in other MMOs. I decided to try a patrol task. For this task I basically had to run around the perimeter of the camp to the red dots on the minimap. I returned, completed the quest, then selected the supply run option. I left the camp and followed the roads till I reached some NPCs to hand in the supplies. After going through the dialogue options of the NPC I handed the supplies to, he then gave me a quest to find 2 missing scouts at a nearby cave. The cave was fairly vast and had a few dead ends with a lot of mobs, so I had to fight my way through. The quest indicator didn't give me an exact location for where to find these NPCs, just a general area, so it certainly required a bit of exploration and observation. During this time I ran into another player who saw my name and assumed it was me. I was really surprised that anyone would recognize me with this name, so shout out to Magica de Hex. After trying to run through the cave to skip mobs and dying, I eventually found both NPCs, one dead and one paralysed. The quest took a fair amount of time and was quite enjoyable due to the exploration aspect to it. I added it into the NPC and that appears to be where that story ends for now. After completing the starting area quests, I decided it was time for a bit of exploration. I climbed a nearby mountain to look around, and the view distance of this game is just amazing. Being able to see those giant mountain peaks and point of interests from so far away makes you want to go there. The world in Ashes of Creation has this epic sense of scale and freedom about it that sparks your excitement for exploration, and this Alpha 1 area is only 17% of what the full-sized game world will be at launch. With this in mind, Ashes of Creation could feel like one of the largest and most expansive worlds we've seen in the MMO genre when it fully releases. Next, I ventured into two different biomes north of the starting area. One was dry and dusty, and the other was more of a swampy marsh area. Both of the nodes here were at encampment level, so I returned to the forest and found a node at the village stage. The village stage node looked pretty cozy. There were a few plots of land for sale, quite a lot of NPCs around, and it seems as though players could vote for a mayor who could then set a tax rate at this stage. I also had the option to become a citizen of this node via purchasing an apartment for 2,500 gold. I left the node and continued exploring, automatically picking up a quest when I visited a lake. There was a lot of broodmother mobs and the quest here seemed to be bugged. I died due to pulling a group mob and lost half of the gathering resources in my inventory, which felt pretty brutal. I also had a bug where the game thought I was swimming when I was walking on land, so I couldn't dismount. I decided it was time to make some progress, so I travelled to the north of the map to the tropical biome and spent the next few hours grinding mobs, experimenting with the combat, and selling loot. I actually found monster loot in Ashes of Creation to be fairly boring. Monsters only seem to drop essences of varying rarities that can be used for crafting or sold. They don't seem to drop anything else. On one hand, my inventory wasn't filled with useless junk, and crafting is more important due to not getting gear from mob drops, but on the other hand, I just focused on grinding the mobs that had the highest level but lowest HP to maximise my grinding efficiency. There was no real reason for me to kill high HP mobs when the XP and loot rewards for killing a low HP mob of the same level is the same. During this grinding session, I died 1 or 2 times due to mobs respawning on me. It seems like every death you lose 50% of your essence and gathered resources, which actually feels really brutal, but kept things tense and had me playing like it was an Iron Man challenge. Imagine grinding for 3 hours and getting 1,000 essence which you could sell for 5,000 gold. Then a mob spawns on you and you lose 50% of that. Feels rough, man. Additionally, one of my deaths resulted in minus 20% XP debt in addition to losing half of my stuff. Such a feeling I'd imagine is only comparable to divorce. Whilst I do like that you're punished for dying, I think the exact values probably need some balancing. After a fair few hours of grinding, I eventually reached level 10 and got a big damage laser beam ability. Overall, the mage combat in Ashes so far feels pretty decent by tab targeting standards. However, if you're an action combat fan, you might not be too impressed with it. It felt like a cross between Arcade and Guild Wars 2. Still a lot of work needed, but for level 10 alpha combat, not bad at all. Upon hitting level 10, I did a bit more exploring and came across this rather amusing horse bug. And then I found this awesome looking castle packed with mobs which then proceeded to kill me across the map. After that, I started making progress with a level 10 main quest that I'd had for quite some time, where I had to follow an apparition across the map. Eventually it led me to a raid entrance that has a dragon for a main boss. Unfortunately, I didn't have a group to experience this content with though. I returned to the village node that I had visited the previous day to find that the building architecture had changed from Kalar to Empyrean. I was under the impression that this only occurs when a node levels up, but maybe I'm wrong about this. Either way, it was really cool to see the node evolve. I spent the last few hours of the Alpha 1 weekend focusing on the questing. Quests and Ashes of Creation are dotted around all over the place, and you really need to look for them. They're not obvious. For example, I came across a camp of NPCs and just decided to talk to them to see if there was anything I could do. There was no quest markers. Some NPCs had nothing for me, whilst others had multiple stage narrative quests that would lead me to multiple locations across the zones. As someone that's a big fan of sandbox MMOs, I love how quests are designed in Ashes of Creation. For the most part, they're self-contained stories, but they don't usually stop after one step. You don't kill 10 bears and then hand it in. There's usually a few more stages to each quest that feel like their own little mini adventures. In terms of rewards, questing feels less efficient XP wise compared to just grinding mobs, and I think there's probably not enough quests to level up via questing alone. You'll need to do a bit of grinding and a bit of questing. Quests do, however, reward you with weapons and armor, and due to these things not dropping from mobs, obtaining them via questing does feel rewarding. The last thing I did was find a weapon vendor and experiment with different weapons. Each class can equip and use every weapon in Ashes, however some classes are better with certain weapons than others. For example, a mage will deal more damage with a wand than a tank, and vice versa with swords. After messing around with the melee combat for a bit, I think it's currently lacking compared to the mage combat. I don't like how attacks move you forwards, and it feels more clunky and animation locked compared to the free-flowing, unrestricted movement of the mage. But that was pretty much it for my time playing the Ashes of Creation Alpha 1 weekend. Overall, I had a great time playing the game, and by video game Alpha 1 standards, it's very impressive. Performance-wise, the game ran surprisingly well, visually it looked great, and all of the core features seemed to be working as intended. Unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to participate in a castle siege yet, as they always seem to take place in the morning of my time zone, but hopefully during the next non-NDA test this week I can give it a try and do a live reaction style video like normal if my camera doesn't mess up again. As always, let me know your thoughts on Ashes of Creation so far based on what you've seen from the Alpha 1 live streams, and click my link in the description below to sign up for Ashes of Creation with me as a referral if you enjoy the content. Thanks for watching, I hope you all had a successful day, and I'll see you again really soon.